That's actually another question that, because we're looking at the system, how can this bill also look at the hospital capacities of a locality to include LGU hospitals and to include private hospitals, but most especially LGU hospitals, because nakita ko dito they will in the bill, no, they will also they will analyze the situation at the local level, titignan nila yung mga requirement doon. They will also look at what is the appropriate capacity of the DOH hospital in that locality. Pero sa tingin ko, kailangan din tignan nila yung buong system ng locality, no? To take into consideration, let's say, the capacity of the LGU hospital. No? Is that a possibility that in this bill to look at the system requirement of a locality? Ako ang inaano ko lang yung sa Valenzuela, because like in our city, we're synergizing local hospital tsaka yung DOH hospital namin. Sinisynergize para they're not competing, rather they're complementing. For example, in the LGU, we handle the primary care or yung level 1. Tapos yung DOH hospital namin handles level 2 and level 3. So we don't, in a way, we complement each other, no? So they don't invest as much in primary care. Kami naman, we invest in primary care. So is that type of arrangement can be, is that an idea that can be incorporated in this bill, that type of arrangement, so that we can look at local system-wide situations?
Mukhang, Mr. President, may mga leksyon na matututunan po tayo in terms of the overall implementation of universal healthcare law. In relation to that po, Mr. President, I think the important point na binibring up ng good gentleman from Valenzuela ay there's some kind of integration at least up to the provincial level. Kaya may eyes on the ground ang DOH, for example, na of our 82 provinces, Mr. President, 36 ay walang DOH hospitals. So, and sigurado kung walang DOH hospitals sa 36 provinces, kailangan pa tayong deeper dive. So, ilan ang kulang na bed capacity doon? And then we could also look, are there LGU hospitals in those provinces? May complementarity ba with other health facilities in the absence of a DOH provincial hospital? Or lalo na, kung in those 36 provinces na walang DOH hospitals, kung kulang din yung mga LGU hospitals. So there are different approaches through which we can look at ano yung gaps sa overall service delivery network for health sa Pilipinas.
Yep.
And I'm willing to explore that, Mr. President, in terms of yung LGU hospitals.
Yeah. Nakita ko lang dito sa Section 4, authority to approve. And then in page 2, line 1, it says here, taking into consideration the hospital's development plan, catchment population. So when you say catchment population, you're talking about yung local scenario or your local demographics. And then meron din dito healthcare provider network. So I was ang chain of thought ko dito, all of these are related to the available capacities at the local level, no? And when I say available capacity, that includes local government hospitals and also private hospitals, but more so local government, because gobyerno rin sila. A lot of our local governments are also practicing zero balance billing. Ngayon, padami na ng padami. And that's why it has to, I'm looking at a government hospital system integration, no? So nakikita ko na there's a potential to look at the local government system, local hospital system, at mapasok natin dito so that holistic yung pagtitingin ng capacities.
Mr. President, ngayon pa lang aligned na yung line of questioning or line of thought ng good gentleman from Valenzuela dun sa pinag-uusapan natin kaninang Philippine Health Facility Development Plan. Dahil dun po sa plano nila na National Development Plan for all types of health facilities to achieve UHC. Kaya pwede nga nating tignan yon dun sa Congressional Oversight Committee. Diyan sa PHFDP, under public sector, meron talaga siyang category of LGU-owned, including primary care facilities at saka LGU hospitals. Na dun sa kabuang PHFDP, pasok siya sa Provincial Health Facility Development Plan at Local Investment Plan for Health, Mr. President.
Okay. So ano talaga, under this PHFDP,
Opo.
the local government capacities will also be taken into consideration.
Yes, Mr. President.
But of course, in terms of investment and funding, iba naman, I would assume, iba yung approach because local government hospitals will have local governments funding the capacities, and obviously national funding will go to the DOH hospitals. No? Yeah, but in terms of system,
Yes.
napag-aaralan yung system. Yeah.
Opo, Mr. President. Ang kagandahan siguro ng pagkakaroon ng executive ng plano tulad ng PHFDP, tapos tayo naman dito sa legislature na tinatayo natin progressively yung health enhancing na policy framework, ay dahil UHC system ay isa sa mga pillars nun, yung health financing, health insurance, we can really examine how habang nag-evolve yung implementation natin ng universal healthcare, kung paano din efficiently at effectively na mobilize yung iba't ibang resources at paano pwedeng mag-complement itong mga resources na ito sa isa't isa to achieve yung health goals natin.
So is it
Mr.
correct to
President.
say, Her Honor, that with this bill under Section 5, yung Philippine Health Facilities Development Plan, we will now have a concrete roadmap, including budgetary requirements, take into consideration the system requirements. Magkakaroon tayo ng roadmap in terms of funding.
Yes, Mr. President, kasama na po yun.
Yeah. And then, meron na bang preliminary assessment ang DOH in terms of with our present allocation in HFEP? Kasi ang HFEP natin ngayon is about 22 billion. About 22 billion. How long will it take in order to at least fulfill the backlog? Meron ba silang, have they ran simulations to that effect?
Hindi lang, 2040. Wala pa. Okay. Wala pa. Honestly, Mr. President, wala pa
Wala
po.
pa.
Hanggang marating natin yung zero backlog. Meron lang pong ilang mga targets na sineset mula ngayong taon hanggang 2028. Ibig sabihin, target beds accounting for increases of so many beds per year at yung magiging cost niya. Pero wala pa yung dun sa yung finish line na gano'n na talagang ma-close absolutely yung gap, Mr. President.
Meron lang ako share sa, can we show this, itong table 2, tinignan namin yung mga capacities. And I support this measure because nakita ko yung, like you mentioned earlier, Her Honor, yung mga capacities natin. Itong occupancy rates per region. Can we show that?
Ayun.
Yeah, itong for 2024, tama, like you said, balik. Marami sa ating mga regions surpassing 100% capacity na, no? And this is a worrisome situation because even though zero balance billing tayo, even though we can use PhilHealth in our government hospitals, but if our constituents will go to a hospital and they experience ganito, 100%, ibig sabihin punong-puno. In iba, more than 100%, meaning nasa hallway na yung mga hospital beds or iba, nasa labas pa. So, hindi magiging magiging maayos yung healthcare system natin and the experience of our constituents. But we also looked at several hospitals, ito hospital specific na because this is average. In some of these specific hospitals, meron tayong mga hospitals 300%. For example, in San Lorenzo Luis General Hospital, 374%. Siargao Island Medical Center, 312%. Johnny Villanueva General Hospital, this is in Bukawi. I believe si Senator Joel ang nag-push para mapatayo itong hospital, 242%, and so on. Itong Margo sa Tubig Regional Hospital, 205%. So ibig sabihin, talagang twice the capacity na experience or thrice
Opo, Mr.
experience na ating constituents. And like I said, even though we have zero balance billing, we have PhilHealth, but if there are no beds, then there's no service. No? That's why I see the importance of this bill and the importance of putting a roadmap and a plan in order to finance the requirements of our hospitals. So with that, Mr. President, again, I commend the gentle lady from Iloilo, Her Honor, for putting this innovative bill to the floor so that we can discuss this. And I look forward in enacting this bill so that it will be complementary to our discussions when we talk about the budget once again towards the end of the year. Importante may roadmap para hindi lang palakasan or hindi lang nagiging kung sino ang may access sa funding, kundi meron tayong roadmap and it's based on development plans, catchment population, healthcare provider networks, available of human resources. So meron siyang criteria on how to lay down the plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and to the good gentleman from Valenzuela. Just to a few of the last points he made, dun sa pinakitang mga regions, they account for 43 hospitals with over 100% capacity.
Yeah.
Opo. So kung wala po tayong Philippine Health Facility Development Plan, kung hindi natin i-contextualize yung ganitong bill sa FDP, we would need 43 bills para lang ibaba yung occupancy rate from over 100% to below 100% through increasing bed capacity by legislation. Idagdag pa po natin yung 36 hospitals sa mga probinsya na 36 provinces na walang DOH hospital. Kung kailangan nating punuin yung gap na yon through legislation, we would need to act on a total of 79 bills. And usually ang legislation po natin sa ganitong importanteng pangangailangan would take on the average from 21 months up to 3 years per hospital. So if instead i-maximize po natin yung PHFDP and then yung taong-taong pagpasa natin ng GAA to vet yung ipopropose administratively ng DOH. At nire-require din ng panukalang batas na to ang DOH to report annually to Congress. Then mas ma-facilitate po natin at mas mapapabilis in a rational way yung paghahabol natin dun sa gap sa bed capacity, Mr. President.
So instead of the legislative route, it will be an administrative route.
It would be an administrative route, Mr. President, on the operational matters. Pero ganun pa rin, yung policy setting, tayo pa rin sa Kongreso, yung pagpondo or hindi, and to what degree, dadaan pa rin taon-taon sa GAA. And then, kailangan pa rin nilang ang DOH kailangan pa rin mag-report back annually sa Kongreso. So may ganong complementation sa mandates at saka sa duties, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Risa, for
Thank you, good gentleman.
accepting a few of our clarification questions and also suggestions on the possibility of including LGUs
Yes,
in
opo.
the planning process. No?
At the proper time, let's do that, Mr. President, sa period of amendment.
Yeah. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming
Thank you.
salamat po. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Hindi ko pa na siya, hindi ko pa nasulat eh.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study it further, we move to suspend consideration of the measure. So, Mr. President.
Session the consideration of the measure suspended.
Sige pa, Ay, hindi pa? Okay. Kasi wala. Next week na lang. Wala nang ibang tao dito. Tayo naman. Okay. Si Ma'am Noy, Mr. President. Ah, yes. Deliver na. Wala tayong... Yeah, or else we'll adjourn. Yeah. Is it important? If it's important, we can do it.
It's on the economy. Yes, it was pending since last week.
You have the floor. I'll give you the floor. Sure. Mr. President, can I ask just for a minute suspension to allow the
Session suspended.
sponsor to get Mr. President, I move that we recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Lauren Legarda, to avail of the privilege hour, Mr. President.
Senator Lonnie Legarda is recognized.
Mr. President, I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. The Development Budget Coordination Committee, DBCC, recently released a sober recalibration of our economic outlook. The figures speak for themselves, and they speak loudly. Fourth quarter GDP growth has slowed to a mere 3%. Let that number sink in, 3%. For many Filipinos, a drop from 6% to 3% means fewer jobs, slower business growth, tighter household budgets, and fewer chances for families to move ahead. It has pulled our full-year growth for 2025 down to 4.4%, falling short of our targets and forcing a downward revision of our revenue projections through 2028. This dominoes as the recent data indicates that our debt-to-GDP ratio now is 63.2%, the highest level in 20 years. We have breached the internationally accepted manageable threshold of 60%. This means that a larger portion of our government revenues must be diverted to service debt interest, leaving significantly less funding for healthcare, education, infrastructure, and social services. What makes this deeply concerning is that even amid delayed projects, compromised quality, and persistent waste and misuse of public funds, we continue to borrow. Sa halip na ayusin ang mga prioridad at tapalan ang mga taga sa paggastos, patuloy pa rin tayong nagdaragdag sa ating utang. Ang epekto, mas kaunting silid-aralan at kama sa ospital, mga kalsadang inuulit-ulit ayusin at patuloy na pagtaas ng presyo na lalong nagpapahirap sa buhay ng mga pamilyang Pilipino. That 3% growth, coupled with a high debt to GDP ratio, tells us that the engine is stalling. It's that flashing yellow light on our national dashboard telling us that the old assumptions behind our growth can no longer be taken for granted. For decades, we have relied on a concrete-driven growth engine, a linear, extractive model that prioritizes large-scale infrastructure as a primary input to induce economic growth. This is evidenced by the huge 530 billion peso budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways, which even with a budget cut this year, is still 18 times larger than DNR's meager 27 billion peso budget. When multi-trillion peso programs are accompanied by corruption and blinded oversight, the results become catastrophic. We see it in the delayed projects, the compromised quality of our roads, the diminished investor confidence that restricts our fiscal space. When we persist along the same path with the same institutional vulnerabilities, we are courting repetition of the very failures that brought us to this 3% reality. Mr. President, the question before us is simple. Do we allow these mistakes to happen again? I believe the answer for this chamber and for the Filipino people must be a decisive no. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. While the traditional model falters, a sophisticated alternative has been waiting in the wings for decades. We do not need to be afraid to embrace it. Through our collective work in this House, we have built a legislative fortress, starting with laws that align sustainable development with economic growth, the Ecological Solid Waste Management, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, Climate Change Act, People's Survival Fund, many more. We often hear that environmental protection is a luxury for developing nations. I tell you today, environmental and climate responsive governance is a fiscal imperative. The full realization of the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act should have been able to save us a lot of losses due to unmanaged waste. According to the DNR, the Philippines loses an estimated 45 billion to 51 billion pesos because high-value recyclable plastics are discarded in landfills or leaked into the environment instead of being recycled. Consider flood control, long dominated by hard infrastructure. Under these existing laws, planning shall be integrated with ecosystem-based approaches that restore rivers, wetlands, and mangroves while reducing long-term maintenance costs and exposure to corruption-prone procurement. This helps create a regenerative economy where resources are renewed instead of depleted. Even fiscal planning stands to benefit. Most recently, we enacted the Philippine Ecosystem and Natural Capital Accounting System, PENCAS. This recognizes the economic value of our forests, our reefs, water. It ensures we no longer undervalue the ecosystems that bring and protect our lives, most especially our farmers and fisherfolk who are working closest with nature. Partnered with climate adaptation measures, not only economic assets, but also the lives of people are further protected. By integrating climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction into the core of our national economic policy, we move beyond treating environmental action as optional and instead recognize it as central to sound governance and long-term stability. By transitioning from a reactive post-disaster recovery model to a proactive resilience framework, the government can effectively protect the country's gross domestic product from the cyclical erosion caused by natural calamities. And this is the very reason why we champion the People's Survival Fund, the nation's climate adaptation fund that supports the most vulnerable segments of our nation and drives them towards resilience. But resilience and sustainability are not built on infrastructure and ecosystems alone. They are equally built on people. The same logic that tells us to climate-proof our bridges and coastlines must also compel us to climate-proof our classrooms, communities, and livelihoods. When disasters strike or global markets shift, it is the quality of our human capital that determines whether families can recover and move forward. When our people and enterprises are better protected from these shocks, our country's risk profile improves and investors take notice. Capital is increasingly selective, flowing towards economies that demonstrate coherence between policy, governance, and sustainability. Investors look for signals that growth strategies are aligned with global transitions, not locked into legacy systems that magnify risk. The Philippines is positioned to meet this demand if we continue investing in our human capital. The recent wake-up call from EDCOM 2 report emphasizes that economic planning and education reform must move in tandem. Unless we invest in human growth, our progress will remain uneven and fragile. Education is intrinsically linked to labor and the development of a strong, competitive workforce. This is why we have been instrumental in passing the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education and the UNIFAS Act to ensure that the public stays in public service by making college accessible to all. And to bridge the immediate learning gaps, we passed ARAL Program Act, specifically designed to arrest this learning poverty before it hardens into a lifelong advantage or disadvantage. We are creating a system where a skilled worker can upskill and reskill, ensuring that no Filipino is left behind by the breakneck speed of global change. This investment in human capital is the prerequisite for the Philippine Innovation Act and the Philippine Creative Industries Development Act. These laws represent a strategic shift in our economic policy, moving the Philippines away from a reliance on traditional, low-productivity sectors towards a high-value, knowledge-based economy. By institutionalizing support for so-called intangible assets such as ideas, talent, and technology, we create a framework where growth is driven by productivity and ingenuity, not just by consumption and labor. Circling back to green and sustainable transition, it is not merely an environmental elective. It is a robust engine for employment. The International Labor Organization estimates that achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement could create a net gain of 18 to 24 million jobs by year 2030. The Philippine Green Jobs Act serves as our landmark legislation to capture this growth. I don't see it being implemented though. By offering fiscal incentives and tax deductions to enterprises that generate green jobs or employment that restores and preserves our environment, we strategically future-proof the Filipino workforce. Through green startups empowered by the Magna Carta for Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises, the Barangay Livelihood and Skills Training Act, we position innovation as a practical tool for reform. We move ideas from research to deployment, generating jobs that are not just work, but are actual contributions to our national resilience. That 3% growth figure should not be read solely as a retreat from ambition. It must be understood as a trigger to recalibrate. We must choose. Do we double down on old school expansion that scars our environment and leaves our growth anemic? Or do we fully activate the greener, more resilient blueprint that we have already spent decades codifying into law? We already know the direction that we must take, Mr. President. Nariyan na po ang mga batas at mga alituntunin upang maituwid ang landas ng ating bansa. What is now being asked of us is the political will and collective courage to implement them, and to implement them correctly this time around. Let us be bold and ambitious once more. Let us build a climate and environment responsive economy that keeps our farms productive, that protects our seas, that secures our cities against the growing threats of disaster and climate instability. Let us strengthen a human capital agenda anchored on quality education, aggressive upskilling and reskilling, and a robust social protection system so that Filipino families can stand resilience against disasters, economic disruptions, and global market shocks. Let us pursue an innovation-driven livelihood strategy that transforms Filipino ingenuity and creativity into decent jobs, into competitive enterprises, and sustainable opportunities across every region of our country. This is ultimately a choice between a fragile economy that appears strong on paper but fractures at the first sign of crisis, and a resilient economy that invests deliberately in nature, in Filipino talent, in livelihoods that are capable not only of surviving but of thriving. Economic growth, environmental stewardship, and human capital development are not competing priorities. They form a stronger, more coherent, and more future-ready development strategy. Let us maximize the tools that already exist within our laws, our institutions, and most importantly, within our people, to prove that Philippine growth can be credible, accountable, inclusive, and prepared for the challenges of our time. Maraming salamat. Isang lunti ang Pilipinas sa ating lahat.
Your leader.
Sustainable.
I think economic affairs, this is the 3% recalibration. It's not a matter of personal, whoever, but the economic affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President.
SDGs, di ba? Tama?
Yes, Mr. President, we'd like to refer the speech of the lady senator to the Committee on Economic Affairs as the primary committee, and the secondary committee will be the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. So referred.
No, yet no member on the Foreign Affairs? Wala pa? Foreign Relations? Yes, we were awaiting the nominee of the Good Minority Floor Leader for the extra additional member for the Committee on Foreign Relations, Mr. President. But for the record, Mr. President, I believe that the committee can already start hearing. They could have committee hearings, Mr. President. We start hearing already as soon as possible.
Yes.
And then we can follow the next,
Yes.
or the designation of the minority member in the committee. It's already, there are members of the minority in the committee. Can be in a later date, Mr. President.
Yes, based on our rules, the committee has been organized with the
Yes.
previous chairman. Now, the change of chairmanship does not necessarily remove the members. So
Yes.
therefore, it is the same. It has been organized, and a quorum could probably be could maybe done by merely 2 senators in any hearing.
Yes, Mr.
Therefore, the acting chair or the new chairman may call a hearing on the committee itself.
Yes, I believe the chairperson was just worried because he has a lot of treaties that he would like to already tackle in the
Yes.
committee. And I reminded him earlier, and I'd like to put this on the floor with the permission of the body, that it is already organized. The committee has
Yes.
been organized. We just
Technically,
changed the
yeah.
leadership, yes. So he
Yeah,
can have
therefore.
hearings, Mr. President.
With or without a complete number of members, still the committee may function.
Yes, Mr. President. For the record, we put that.
For the record, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right.
With that, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Wednesday, February 18, 2026. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none. Senator Legarda?
You can work without prejudice to those who want to work in the committees on a Monday or Tuesday.
Oh yes, they can work with the committees. It's merely because of a holiday.
Yes.
Because of a holiday on Tuesday.
Before I do that, I would like to withdraw my motion, Mr. President. I just move to approve the reading of the journal and approval of the minutes of the previous.
You're dispensing with the reading of the journal and moving to
dispensing.
approval?
And its approval, yes, Mr. President.
Yes. Any objection?
44th.
Hearing none, the reading of the journals dispensed with and it is approved.
Yes, and people will be wondering why we're adjourning till Wednesdays because we'll be working until Thursday. So instead of Monday session, and there's no work on Tuesday, we'll come in on Wednesday and just suspend for Thursday, Mr. President.
All right. All right.
Therefore,
So-
I move, Mr. President, that we adjourn on session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 18, 2026.
Any objection? Hearing none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, February 18, 2026.
Advance Happy Valentine's, Mr. President.